Shanti Devi was an old woman with silver hair and tired eyes. She had run the same small tea stall for over 20 years, just outside the gates of a local police station. Her stall was simple, made of old wood and a plastic sheet for a roof. On rainy days, she used bricks to stop water from flowing into her small space. Her hands were always working, washing cups, boiling water, or mixing tea leaves in her old steel kettle. People often walked past her like she was invisible. She never complained. She smiled at everyone who came. Some gave her kind smiles in return. Others didn't even look at her face. Shanti Devi didn't care much. She believed in serving tea with love. That was her only dream now, offering warm chai to strangers, in the hope that it would bring a moment of peace to their lives. One day, clouds filled the sky. A cold wind started blowing. Within minutes, heavy rain poured down over the streets. Most shops closed early, but Shanti stayed. She placed her kettle over the fire and stood under her little roof, watching the rain fall. Just then, a group of young police officers stepped out of the station. They were new recruits, fresh uniforms, loud voices, and proud steps. One of them shouted, "Oi chai wali, still open in the storm?" Shanti smiled kindly. "Yes, Beta. Rain makes tea even more special." Another officer laughed. "We don't pay for street tea. You should offer it for free, old woman." She nodded. "Of course. Sit down. I'll make some strong ginger tea for you. It'll keep the cold away." She turned around and began preparing the tea. Her hands moved fast, boiling water, crushing ginger, adding sugar. The young men sat under a nearby shade, talking loudly, joking. Then, the jokes turned cruel. "Look at her clothes, yeah. She looks like a walking bedsheet. Her voice sounds like a broken radio. Maybe she's 200 years old. Maybe she's a ghost." They laughed loudly. One of them even imitated her walk, bending his back and dragging his feet. Shanti Devi heard everything, but she didn't say a word. She had faced such words many times before. She had learned to stay quiet. That's how she survived. But then, one of them stood up and walked over to her stall. "Enough of this joke. Let's end the fun with a bang," he said, and without warning, he kicked the table. The steel kettle fell off, spilling hot tea over Shanti's hand. She gasped in pain. The skin on her hand turned red instantly. The officer looked shocked for a second, but then laughed. "Oops, sorry, Daddy." The others joined him in laughter. "She'll be fine. She's used to it," one of them said. Shanti stepped back, holding her hand close to her chest. The pain was sharp, but deeper than the burn was the pain in her heart. Still, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked over to the corner of her stall, opened a small wooden box, and pulled out an old, basic phone. Her fingers trembled as she pressed a number saved under the name Beta. The phone rang only once, and then someone answered. Shanti spoke just one sentence. "Beta, it's time." She ended the call. Her face showed no fear now, only calm. The young officers were still laughing. One of them said, "Did you just call the chai union? They'll bring burning samosas?" Another added, "Maybe she called her ghost husband to haunt us." They laughed again. But in less than 5 minutes, everything changed. The wind felt different. A heavy black SUV stopped near the station gate. A man in uniform stepped out, tall, sharp eyes, and a quiet power in his walk. The guard at the gate saluted quickly, almost in panic. 2 senior officers rushed outside, surprised and nervous. One whispered, "Why is he here?" The SUV door opened again, and another man stepped out. He didn't wear a uniform, just a black coat. His face looked calm, but dangerous. He said nothing. He just looked around slowly, and then pointed at the tea stall. The same officers who were laughing just minutes ago now stood frozen, their faces pale. Shanti Devi stood straight, her burned hand still shaking slightly. She looked at the man in the black coat. He walked over to her, bent down, and touched her feet. Then, without turning around, he said in a firm, cold voice, "Nobody touches my mother." The tea stall was now silent. Shanti Devi stood still, her eyes calm but tired. The man in the black coat, her son, stood beside her. His name was Veer Pratap, but the officers would soon realize he was not an ordinary man. Inside the police station, something strange was happening. Phones were ringing one after another. Landline, mobile, wireless set. The station head officer, Inspector Sinha, picked up a call. A sharp voice on the other end said, "Why was an elderly woman assaulted outside your station?" Sinha stammered, "Well, what? I don't know anything yet, sir." The voice continued, "Her name is Shanti Devi. Her son is standing outside your gate. You better treat her like a national treasure." The line disconnected. Sinha's hands began to shake. At the same moment, one junior officer rushed into the office, holding a tablet. "Sir, the footage. You need to see this now." They played the CCTV video. It clearly showed the group of laughing officers mocking Shanti. It showed one of them kicking her table. It showed the kettle spilling hot tea on her hand. "Sir." The lady didn't even fight back. She didn't even raise her voice. The junior whispered. Sinha felt sweat on his forehead. He turned toward the window. Outside, the man in the black coat was now inside the compound, and nobody had stopped him. He walked with silent authority. His eyes scanned everything. One officer tried to stop him. "Sir, visitors are not allowed." Veer Pratap stared at him. The officer immediately stepped back and saluted without another word. Sinha came rushing outside. He recognized Veer now. "Major Veer Pratap, sir. We didn't know." Veer raised one hand to stop him. "I'm not here as a major today. I'm here as a son," he said in a calm but deadly voice. Then he looked at his mother's burned hand. "How did this happen?" Shanti said nothing. She didn't want revenge. She never had. She had called her son because she didn't want to be silenced again. Veer looked at the officers standing nearby. Some were trying to act innocent. Some avoided eye contact. One of them, Constable Bardwaj, looked like he might faint. Then Veer said to the station head, "I want the names of every officer on duty. I want their badge numbers, and I want the CCTV footage secured right now." Sinha stammered, "Sir, I will look into it." Veer interrupted, "You will do it now, not later, not after excuses. If you don't, the next call will go to the Home Minister." Shanti softly placed her hand on her son's arm. "Beta, don't make enemies. They are young. Maybe they didn't know better." Veer looked at her, his eyes softening. "Ma, if we forgive this now, they'll do worse to someone else tomorrow." Just then, another black car arrived. This time, a woman officer stepped out. She was in formal dress and wore a badge that read, "Internal Affairs, Delhi Division." She walked straight to Veer and saluted him. "Sir, orders from HQ. A full investigation begins today. The file is open. The press is already asking questions." Veer didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just said, "Good, let's begin." Inside the station, panic was rising. Constable Bardwaj whispered to his friend, "We thought she was just a poor old woman. We're finished." Another said, "We laughed. We mocked her, and her son is from the Special Forces." They didn't know the full truth yet. Veer Pratap had served in counter-terror operations, trained abroad, and was part of National Security Command. One phone call from him could stop an entire state operation. But today, he made only one call for his mother, the lady with no power, the woman who spent her life serving tea in silence. That night, the news went live. Police station under fire after assault on elderly woman. Victim is mother of national hero. Social media exploded. Pictures of Shanti Devi went viral. People called her Bharat Mal's silent daughter. Veer refused all interviews. He stayed beside his mother, holding her hand, applying ointment gently to her burn. She smiled faintly and said, "You didn't have to do all this." Veer looked into her eyes and replied, "Ma, the country respects me because I wear a uniform, but I learned respect from you." The police officers had made a terrible mistake. They thought Shanti Devi was just a poor old woman. But now, they were realizing the truth. Her son was not a normal man. He was Major Veer Pratap, an officer in the special forces. His name was known in the highest circles of the government, but not in the media. He had led missions that most people never heard about, because they were secret. Vere never showed off. He never told people who he was. But today, the country was learning about him, not from his military medals, but because he stood up for the respect of his mother. Inside the station, tension was rising. Files were being checked. CCTV footage was being copied. Internal affairs officers moved quickly from one room to another. Vere sat beside his mother near her tea stall. He had brought a first aid kit from his car. Gently, he cleaned her burn and wrapped her hand with soft white gauze. Shanti Devi smiled weakly. "You always hated tea, still helping me with it." Vere chuckled softly. "Only your tea, ma. No one else makes it with love." Nearby, some officers watched nervously. They couldn't believe the calm man in a simple black coat was the same person they had heard stories about, the one who had once rescued hostages from a terrorist camp alone. Suddenly, a black military vehicle entered the area. 2 soldiers stepped out and saluted Vere from a distance. One of them approached and said, "Sir, HQ wants to speak with you." Vere took the call. A serious voice said, "Vere, do you want us to take over the station?" He replied, "Not yet, sir. I want this to be handled legally. Let the system work. My mother taught me that." The officer on the phone paused, then said, "Understood. We're standing by." Vere ended the call. The officers inside the station began whispering. He just told the army to stand down. He could have shut the station with one command, but he wants justice, not revenge. That was the difference between Vere and others. He had power, but he also had discipline. Back at the stall, Shanti asked softly, "Why didn't you tell people about your work, Beta?" Vere replied, "Because I was just doing my duty. I didn't want fame. I just wanted to protect the country and protect you." She nodded slowly. "But this country, sometimes it forgets to protect its own people." Vere said, "That's why I'm here, so it remembers." Flashbacks began to appear in Vere's mind. He remembered walking barefoot to school because they couldn't afford shoes. He remembered his mother staying hungry just to save enough for his books. He remembered her crying quietly at night, but smiling every morning. He had promised himself, "If I ever become someone important, the first person I'll protect is Mai." And now, he was keeping that promise. Inside the station, internal affairs officers started calling the names of every officer on duty the day before. The names of those who mocked Shanti Devi were noted. CCTV evidence was saved. Statements were taken. Some officers tried to lie, but others, scared and ashamed, confessed everything. One constable said, "I laughed with them, but now I feel so dirty inside. We treated her like nothing, but she's everything." Later that day, a group of young police cadets came to visit Shanti Devi. They stood in a line, saluted her, and said, "Auntie, we're sorry for what happened. You remind us of our own mothers." Shanti smiled. "Learn from this. Don't repeat it. That's enough for me." Vere watched silently. His heart felt heavy but proud. His mother had never asked for respect, but now the whole world was giving it to her, not because of him, but because of who she was, a strong, kind woman who suffered quietly but lived with dignity. That evening, the DGP, Director General of Police, arrived. He shook hands with Vere and said, "Major, I want to personally apologize. What happened here is shameful." Vere replied, "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to her." The DGP turned to Shanti Devi and folded his hands. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. From today, this station will change." She looked at him kindly. "Then change it for the next mother. I'll be fine." As the sun set, Vere stood up and whispered to his mother, "Let's go home." She smiled. "After I clean my stall, I still have tea left." Vere laughed gently. "Still thinking about your tea, ma?" She said, "Of course. Some pain goes away with medicine, but some only go away with a hot cup of tea." The police station that once laughed at Shanti Devi had now turned into a place of fear. Officers who used to feel powerful were now quiet. Some looked down when they saw Shanti Devi. Others avoided eye contact with her son, Major Veer Pratap. But this wasn't over. The real storm was just starting. Internal Affairs takes control. That morning, a team of senior officers from Internal Affairs entered the station. They carried files, laptops, and cameras. Their leader, ACP Meera Roy, was a sharp, calm woman in her 40s. She had dealt with many corrupt stations before, but this case was different. She had read everything. Old woman bullied at station gate. Son is an army officer. National hero. Public outrage grows. Meera walked up to Veer and saluted. Major, we will not take this lightly. The truth will come out. Veer nodded. Thank you. That's all we ask for. Shanti Devi sat nearby, still running her tea stall. She didn't speak much. She only watched. Even now, she refused to be treated like a victim. The officers under fire, ACP Meera, called the accused officers one by one. Constable Bardwaj was the first to enter the room. He looked nervous. His hands were shaking. Meera asked, "Did you kick her table?" Bardwaj looked down. "I didn't mean to hurt her." "That's not the question." Bardwaj nodded slowly. "Yes, I kicked it." "Why?" "I thought it would be funny." Meera didn't say a word. She just stared at him. That silence was worse than shouting. She said finally, "Funny? Is hurting someone's mother funny to you?" Bardwaj couldn't answer. Other officers were questioned next. Some lied. Some blamed others. But the CCTV footage had already exposed the truth. The country watches. News channels were showing the footage on repeat. This is not just about a tea seller. This is about how we treat the voiceless. People on social media posted messages like, "Respect to Major Veer for standing by his mother. Every police officer should take lessons from this. Real heroes don't wear capes. They make tea and raise sons like him." Crowds started visiting Shanti Devi's stall, not for tea, but just to say, "We're with you." But she kept it simple. "No selfies," she said. "If you want to respect me, just treat the next poor person with kindness." Veer's quiet pain. Veer stayed mostly silent during the investigation. But inside, he was angry. Not because someone hurt his mother, but because so many people stood by and did nothing. That was the real wound. He remembered seeing her on video, standing alone in pain while young men laughed. It crushed his heart. When one officer tried to say, "Sir, we didn't know she was your mother," Veer replied coldly, "Would you have treated her better if she wasn't?" That one question silenced the room. The transfer order. After 2 days of investigation, Meera handed a file to Veer. "These are the results," she said. 5 officers are suspended. 2 will be transferred. 1 faces criminal charges. Veer didn't smile. He just nodded. Shanti Devi didn't look happy either. She said gently, "Beta, they will get punished, but will they become better humans?" Veer didn't answer. That question had no easy answer. An unexpected visitor. That evening, as the sun set, a young constable arrived at the stall. It was Rahul, one of the officers who had laughed but said nothing. He walked up slowly, holding something in his hand, a small envelope. "I saved this from my first salary. I want to donate it, to help other elderly women like you." Shanti looked at him kindly. "I don't need your money, beta, but I do need your promise." Rahul looked confused. "What promise?" "Next time you see someone being treated badly, speak up, even if you are afraid." Rahul nodded, eyes full of guilt and respect. "I promise." At night. That night, Veer and Shanti walked home together. Her tea stall was closed. The streets were quiet. Shanti looked up at the sky. "It's strange," she said. "I lived all my life in silence, but the world finally heard me after I got burned." Veer replied softly, "Maybe the burn made noise, ma, but it was your silence that gave it meaning." They didn't need to say more. Sometimes, dignity speaks louder than anger. The news had now spread across every corner of the country. Newspapers printed headlines like, "Mother of Army Hero Humiliated, Nation Demands Justice." Tea sellers' silence shakes police system. Shanti Devi, once ignored, was now being called the quiet lioness. But she didn't want fame. She didn't care about the cameras or interviews. She just wanted respect, not for herself, but for every mother, every elder, every poor person who lived in silence. A school invitation. One morning, Veer received a letter. It was from the government girls' school in the city. They weren't inviting him, they were inviting Shanti Devi. They wanted her to speak to the students. Veer asked her, "May, will you go?" Shanti smiled. "Why not? Maybe these girls will grow up to be better than the people who kicked my table." The speech that touched hearts. The next day, Shanti stood on a small stage. Hundreds of schoolgirls sat in neat rows, wearing uniforms, eyes wide open. Shanti wore her simple cotton sari and held the mic with shaking hands. She took a deep breath and said, "I was poor. I am still poor. I made tea to feed my son. People laughed at me. Some insulted me. Some hurt me. But I never lost my manners. I never lost my respect." There was silence. Some students wiped their tears. Shanti continued, "My son wears a uniform, but before that, he wore torn shoes. He walked on hot roads with me. We ate one meal a day. But he never complained. And today he fights for the country. But I want you to fight too. Fight against hate. Fight against cruelty. And if you ever get power, use it to protect, not to hurt." The hall echoed with applause. It wasn't loud like stadium cheers, but it was pure. Even the teachers stood up and clapped. Change in the station, back at the police station. Things had started to change. A new officer in charge was posted, Inspector Meena Joshi, known for her honesty. She took charge and made new rules. No shouting at citizens. All CCTVs must stay on. A respect for elders signboard placed at the gate. Weekly kindness training for staff. She even invited Shanti Devi for a tea ceremony at the station. Shanti smiled, but said, "Only if I can serve the tea." The officers agreed. For the first time, police and public sat together, drinking tea from her hands. It wasn't just tea. It was a symbol of change. Veer's quiet message. Later that week, a journalist asked Veer, "Major, how do you feel now? Justice has been served. What would you like to say to the nation?" Veer looked into the camera. His voice was calm. "Power means nothing if it can't protect the weak. My mother was just one victim. But there are millions more who suffer silently. I don't want medals. I don't want revenge. I want a system where no old woman has to call her son for protection." The video went viral. Even army generals shared it with the message, "True strength lies in standing for what is right." An old friend returns. One day, a man in his 60s came to Shanti Devi's stall. He wore simple clothes, but his eyes were sharp. He said, "Do you remember me?" She looked at him carefully. "Ramesh?" He nodded. They had grown up in the same village. He said softly, "I came to the city 20 years ago. I became rich, but I lost myself. When I saw you on the news, I felt ashamed. I forgot who I was." Shanti smiled. "It's never too late to remember." He handed her a small bag. She opened it. Inside were new cups, kettles, and a stall signboard with her name printed in bold. Shanti Devi's tea, served with respect. Tears filled her eyes. This was not charity. This was dignity. Night talk. That night, as Veer and Shanti sat on the roof of their home, watching the stars, she asked, "Do you think things will really change?" Veer replied, "Maybe not fast, but one heart at a time, one lesson at a time, we can make a better tomorrow." She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Then keep teaching, beta. Don't ever stop." Shanti Devi was no longer just a tea seller. She had become a symbol of strength, a symbol of dignity, a symbol of every mother who sacrifices quietly. But not everyone was happy. Some powerful people inside the system felt threatened. "How can a poor old woman make the police change?" they said. They tried to slow the investigation. They tried to shift the focus. But Veer didn't let go. He knew this was bigger than his mother now. The award ceremony. One day, a letter came from the Home Ministry. They were giving Shanti Devi a national award for bravery and dignity. It was rare. Very few civilians ever received it. The ceremony was held in a large hall in Delhi. Ministers, army officers, media, everyone was there. Veer wore his uniform. Shanti wore the same simple sari she always wore, clean, old, and proud. When her name was called, the hall stood up in applause. As she walked to the stage, people took photos. But she didn't smile for the camera. She smiled when she saw Veer standing with folded hands, not as a soldier, but as a son. The President of India gave her the medal and said, "You taught the country what silent courage looks like." She took the medal and replied softly, "I didn't fight with hands. I fought with tears and truth." Meanwhile, in the police department, the investigation was nearing its end. 3 officers had resigned. One officer apologized on live TV. "I mocked her," he said. "I forgot my mother's face when I did it. I was wrong." Public pressure had grown. People started demanding changes in other stations too. In villages and cities, people asked their police to be more human. This case had started with one tea stall. Now, it was changing the country. Mother and son visit the village. After the award, Veer took Shanti back to their home village. It had been years. Fields were still green. The old house was still there. But now, the villagers ran to meet them. Children touched Shanti's feet. Women hugged her. Old men said, "We watched you on TV. You made us proud." Veer smiled and said, "She made me proud long before the TV did." They stayed for 2 days. Shanti cooked for the neighbors. Veer helped clean the old well. For the first time in years, they felt peace. The letter that broke her one night, after returning from the village, Shanti found a letter outside the stall. It was handwritten. "Auntie, I'm sorry. I was one of the officers who stood and laughed. I couldn't sleep after what I saw. I resigned yesterday. I'm going back to my village. I want to become a teacher. I want to be someone my mother can be proud of. Thank you for showing me the mirror." Shanti read the letter twice. Tears rolled down her face, not from pain, but from hope. Veer read it too and said, "You didn't just raise me, May. You're raising a nation." Media tries to dig deep. Some journalists try to find old details about Shanti's past. Was she always poor? Where was her husband? But Shanti gave the same answer to all. "Some stories don't need drama. I lived with less money, but I was never empty. I had my son. I had my pride. That's enough." People loved her honesty. She became a guest on talk shows, but only once or twice. She said no to fame. She said yes to humanity. Veer's heartfelt message to youth. In a college event, Veer gave a short speech. His voice was strong but soft. "My mother never went to school, but she taught me discipline. She never went to war, but she taught me how to fight for what's right. Don't wait for someone to get hurt before you act. Speak up when you see wrong. And most important, never forget who made you who you are." The students gave a standing ovation, not just for Veer, but for the idea of motherhood. That night, Shanti looked at the medal on her small table. She didn't care about gold, but she cared that her life, her quiet pain, had meant something. She turned to Veer and said, "Now I can sleep in peace. Even if I don't wake up tomorrow, I know I left something behind." Veer held her hand tightly. "You're not going anywhere, May. The world still needs you." The city had changed. The police station had changed. Even the people who once laughed at pain had now started listening. But Shanti Devi, the old woman with the tea stall, stayed the same. She still woke up early. She still made tea with her worn-out kettle. She still smiled at strangers, even if they didn't smile back. Because her strength was never in her words. It was always in her silence. The school named after her one day, a small government school in a poor neighborhood, was renamed Shanti Devi Balika Vidyalaya, Shanti Devi Girls' School. Veer was invited to the opening. He stood with schoolgirls and local leaders as a new signboard was revealed. Shanti didn't attend. When Veer called her and said, "Ma, they named a school after you," she laughed softly and said, "Good. Now tell them to name the library after all the mothers who were never known." An unexpected visitor. One morning, a man wearing a military uniform came to the tea stall. He wasn't from India. He was from a peacekeeping group under the United Nations. He had seen Veer's interview and wanted to meet his mother. He told her, "In our country, elders are treated with fear, not love. But you showed us another way." He drank her tea and asked, "What is your message to the world?" Shanti just said, "No matter what country you're from, we all come from a mother. Respect her, and you'll never go wrong." He smiled and replied, "The world needs to hear that." Shanti's health weakens. As weeks passed, Shanti's energy began to fade. The long days and stress had taken a toll. One evening, she sat quietly on the stool beside her tea stall and looked tired. Veer noticed and rushed to her side. "Are you okay, Mai?" She smiled faintly and said, "I think my time is coming. Don't be sad. I see more than I ever hoped for." Veer knelt down beside her, holding her hand. Tears formed in his eyes. "The country knows you. But only I know how much you gave up, just to see me in uniform." She whispered back, "And you gave me a reason to keep going, even when I was invisible to the world. A peaceful goodbye." One early morning, Shanti Devi passed away in her sleep. There was no pain, no sound. Just a quiet goodbye, like the quiet life she had always lived. The news spread across the country. Nation mourns the loss of Shanti Devi, the mother who moved millions with silence. Thousands attend her funeral. Leaders, army men, schoolgirls, tea vendors, and policemen all stood together. There were no walls between them, just respect. Veer stood still, holding her photo. He didn't cry loudly, but his heart was heavy with love and gratitude. Her last words. Before passing, Shanti had written a note, a small one, tucked inside a tin box. It read, "If one child is kind to their mother because of me, if one officer treats a poor person with respect, then my life was not small. It was complete." A statue in her memory. Months later, a statue of Shanti Devi was placed outside the very police station where she was once insulted. Not made of gold, not large or grand. Just a simple statue of an old woman holding a kettle and a cup with a small plaque that read, "Power is not in loud voices. Power lives in quiet dignity." Visitors came from far away. Some brought flowers. Some just stood in silence.